No DQ Galaxy. Welcome to No DQ&A Video Live here on the nodq.com YouTube channel. You're also watching this maybe on Facebook and or Twitter/X. Regardless of where you're watching this, thank you all so much for your support of nodq.com. Normally, we do the No DQ review on Sunday nights, but Virtue was feeling a bit under the weather, so we are postponing until Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Figured I would come on here and answer some of your questions. We are on the road to WrestleMania 40. A lot of questions were sent in, so we'll see how many I can get to. Please share a link to this video on your social media accounts. It would be very much appreciated. Now, shout out to Marshall Leonard, who sent in a super chat. He actually sent in two. He's going first to have his question answered. Feel free to super chat questions. Those will take priority over the other questions that I've been given via email. Anyways, Marshall's question, two-parter here. He said, I think if Jon Moxley wanted to, he could return to WWE tomorrow due to his relationship with Triple H. What do you guys think? And then he added in a second $5 super chat message, he said, or is Jon Moxley not able to get out of his contract with AEW? Well, let's put this to bed right now. I would bet a lot of money that Jon Moxley does not want to go back to WWE. Now, let's say he was unhappy. He wanted to leave. I do not think Tony Khan would let him out of his contract. I think Moxley would have to sit it out. We saw William Regal get out of his contract, but there was a stipulation with that. Regal could not appear on WWE television during 2023. With Moxley, and this is just a what if, I don't think it's going to happen. He probably would not be able to appear on WWE television if he was let out of his contract early. But there's really no point in talking about this all that much because I really legitimately do not think that Jon Moxley has any interest in going back to WWE. I think he's very happy with his run in AEW, and I do not see him leaving anytime soon. Now, let's get to some WrestleMania 40 discussion. Shout out to Big Baller G, longtime No DQ contributor. Big G said, what are your thoughts on the current WrestleMania 40 card, and what other matches am I expecting to be on the card? I think it's one of the stronger WrestleMania cards, just what we have right now. Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, the rematch from last year. You have The Rock added to the mix. You're doing this tag team match, arguably the biggest tag team match in wrestling history. I mean, as far as star power goes, it's definitely up there. Now, as far as matches that I expect to be added, obviously Gunther will have an Intercontinental title match, but who will be his opponent? And there's some new speculation about what might happen with Gunther and the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. More on that in a little bit. I would expect some sort of multi-way match on the show just to get everybody in front of the crowd at WrestleMania, whether it's an Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, the Dre, or some sort of six-way match or tag team title turmoil, some kind of 8-team match or 4-team match. I would expect several of those type of matches just to get everybody on the card. And I hope we have every title defended at WrestleMania. I'm definitely wanting to see the women's tag team titles defended in a meaningful match, not just some throwaway match, which unfortunately I feel like it'll be the latter rather than a match that has a lot of buildup and hype going into it. But what they have already, I think, is very strong on paper, and it looks like it could be one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time. Now, we're going to sidetrack a little bit. Like I said, Super Chats take priority. Mr. Tito sent in a $5 Super Chat, says, what is your policy on no DQ's opinions section? Like, explain how you're open to any point of view and grant freedom of speech. Thanks, boss. Well, my policy is that as long as you're not making hateful comments, using racism, hate speech, so on and so forth, as long as you're just expressing an opinion on wrestling, I've always felt like people should have that platform to say what they want. Maybe it's completely ridiculous and it's a take that nobody is going to agree with. Maybe it's a trolling comment. Maybe it's somebody who's just legitimately frustrated. But whatever it is, I like to give people a platform to express their opinion on wrestling. And we all have different opinions. And even if you think somebody's opinion is completely obnoxious or out of line, I think that people should have that platform to say what they want to say and vent and get it out, because you never know. Somebody might have an opinion that could persuade you, even if it is something outside of the box. So that is generally my perspective on the opinion section of NoDQ.com. I know people have a lot of hot takes. Tito is definitely one of those people. And there are several others that have some hot takes, and sometimes they're not all that popular. But at the end of the day, it's about letting people have the ability to express what's on their mind. All right, so let's get to Brock Lesnar. A lot of speculation about Brock Lesnar, and I'm going to get to Hamps right now. Dwayne Atkinson had sent this in. Are the rumors true that Brock Lesnar has been reinstated? And if so, how will he be used at WrestleMania? Possibly helping Cody in the main event. And then Hamp Connell sent in a $9.99 super chat. So this ties into Brock. And I actually got another question from Michael about with it looking like Brock is back, will we see a change on Raw so we get Brock Lesnar versus Gunther? And I just mentioned the WrestleMania matches a few moments ago. So Hamp said, since Brock is back on the roster, he should be added to the world title match with 4 weeks to go. Also, what if this means that the woman's story is bogus and Vince is cleared also? Okay, let's not get too carried away with all this. Over the weekend, it came out that Brock Lesnar's profile was back on WWE.com, which I'm not even sure if that's completely accurate, because I did not check this myself, but apparently Brock's profile was on the website the entire time. It was never actually removed. Now, it may have been moved into alumni. That I'm not sure of. I don't know if Brock being listed as an active WWE star again necessarily means anything, but it is wrestling. And maybe this is a sign that Brock Lesnar and WWE were able to work out whatever issues there were, and the company feels safe bringing him back. Maybe they felt like the heat died down. Maybe there isn't enough to really go after Brock Lesnar from a legal standpoint, and they're going to bring him back. We'll see. Could he potentially enter the gauntlet match on Raw and end up facing Gunther at WrestleMania, which was reportedly the original plan? Sure. Anything's possible. It's WWE, it's wrestling. Never say never. Brock Lesnar could be back at any time. I don't think he's going to be put in the world title match. Like, if he comes back for WrestleMania, I would see him going up against Gunther. That was the original plan. and they could still do that. Would not shock me if Brock Lesnar showed up and got that match somehow. We'll see what happens. Anything's possible. So thank you, Hamp, for that super chat. And thank you to Dwayne and Michael, who also asked about Brock Lesnar. Now, Dwayne Atkinson sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Dwayne. I appreciate it. And Dwayne said, do you feel The Rock gave away the finish of the main event on SmackDown? I do feel like because The Rock said that if Cody loses, he will never challenge for the title again, that gives it away, I think. But we still have 4 weeks left. There can still be a lot of twists and turns in the storyline. And also, I still, even before Rock said that, I'm still thinking Cody Rhodes wins at WrestleMania. But as we've been talking about on the No DQ videos and the live streams, it's good when WWE gives us some twists and creates, even if it's just a small amount, just a little bit of doubt that maybe Cody will not finish the story at WrestleMania. But I think it has to happen. I think Cody finishing the story is what needs to happen at WrestleMania so we can move forward with The Rock and Roman Reigns' storyline and get that settled. All right, so back to some of these questions we got here. Colin Andrew, thank you, Colin, sent in this question, says, if you had to book the men's tag team title match at WrestleMania 40, who would be the challengers and how would you do the finish? Okay, so it looks like they're doing a multi-man or multi-team match. They might split the titles. I mean, we're going to find out very soon what's going on here. They're planning to make some sort of big announcement, but if it was me, and I don't know if they're going in this direction now, they might not be, but I would have gone with Awesome Truth. I know it's not the most credible tag team going up against Judgment Day, but R-Truth has been for weeks and really going back years, one of the highlights of Monday Night Raw. He has been so entertaining, and I think the guy deserves his flowers. He deserves more than that 24/7 title. I would have loved to have seen Miz and R-Truth actually win the tag team titles at WrestleMania, so R-Truth gets like a legitimate WrestleMania moment, not some comedy segment, but a legit big win at WrestleMania, him and Miz. It would be a feel-good moment. And I say if anybody deserves that kind of moment, it's R-Truth. And Miz would get a big moment too, winning with R-Truth after years of basically being booked as a joke as well. Not to the level of R-Truth, but still Miz hasn't really even come close to that level he was at during his peak when he won the WWE title and beat John Cena at WrestleMania. So that would be my pick. Awesome Truth winning the titles from Judgment Day, but my feeling is now that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens. Maybe they do a multi-way match and Awesome Truth is in it and they win it. We'll see. All right. Let's move on here to Daniel Sims, who sent in this question. He said, since they're making it so obvious that Cody is winning at WrestleMania and they're turning him into the new Cena, will he start getting boos from the fans by SummerSlam? A lot of people speculate on that, and I don't think he'll get that level of backlash. Like, of course, if he's champion for too long and it's the same thing for too long, people might sour on it. And that's why some argue that Cody is better off chasing. So maybe it would be a good idea to not have him as champion for over 6 months. I mean, you really have to just see how it goes and listen to the fans and try to keep his run fresh, not repeat the same opponents, not repeat the same finishes, try to change things up. If they can do that, I think there's a good chance they can avoid getting a Cena-like level of backlash. Like, I just don't think it's going to happen anyways, because I think fans are just fully behind Cody Rhodes and everything he's done up to this point. So I don't think it's going to be anything like what happened with John Cena in 2005. All right, shout out to WWE Fan 2000 Geo, who sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Says, hey, Aaron, I'll be live at WrestleMania 40. It's my first live Mania since 28. Any advice or recommendations on how to spend my week in Philadelphia? Anybody who's been to Philadelphia who wants to chime in here, feel free to in the chat room, and WWE Fan 2000 Geo, you could check out some of those comments. I've been to Philadelphia, so I can give you a little bit of advice on what I would do and what I did do when I was there. The Rocky statue is one of the main attractions there in that museum. That's where the statue's at. Definitely go there. That's one of the main attractions. You have to get a Philly cheesesteak if you're in Philadelphia. That's something. The Liberty Bell, big part of American history. Go to downtown Philadelphia for that. Check out the location of the original ECW arena, ECW Philadelphia. That's a must visit. And anybody in the chat room, if you guys have some other ideas, throw it by him. Thank you for that super chat. Hamp Connell sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Hamp. Hamp said, let's say Cody Rhodes loses at WrestleMania again. How do you see the backlash from the IWC playing out? Oh, man. If that happens, if Cody loses at WrestleMania again, it's not going to be a pretty sight. Like, if you don't like negativity on the internet, you might as well just shut off your computer, shut off your phone, stay as far away from Twitter and X as possible. Like it might be Armageddon on Twitter. Like the level of the meltdown would just be astronomical. I mean, it would just be a terrible decision. You have to let Cody finish the story here and move on from all this with Cody, so we can get to a new place with not just Cody Rhodes but Roman Reigns as well, and get them moving on a new story. You know, it to wrap it up. So, of course, if I'm WWE, I want to tease as much as possible that Roman's winning to keep people on the edge of their seats and keep them guessing. And here's an idea regarding Philadelphia. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention, make sure you guys check out the No DQ meetup that Big G and Walter Cruz are trying to get set up. Contact them on social media and find out what's happening with that. I believe there will be some sort of No DQ meetup. I will not be there for it, but I'll be there in spirit. Big G and Walter Cruz will be representing. And if you see them out and about, make sure you say hi to them and give them a shout out. All right, back to the email questions. Andrew Skinner, who do you think Damian Priest will cash in on? High probability his cash in will be a failure. I would like to see it at WrestleMania. I think he should cash it in on Drew McIntyre. Here's what I would like to see happen. Drew McIntyre beats Seth Rollins so he could finish his story. Drew McIntyre has been wanting to win the world title at WrestleMania in front of a big crowd. So you do this, and then Damian Priest takes it away from him, takes away his big moment. You set up McIntyre versus Priest, and you build some heat for that. Like, that would be a good way to utilize the cash in, get some heat on Damian Priest, and set up a match for those guys for a future show. That's what I would do. I mean, some people think that Priest should cash in on Cody and ruin his moment, but I think that would piss people off too, which, I mean, some might argue, well, that's good heat, but I would rather see it on Drew McIntyre, because Drew McIntyre has also been saying for the past few years, I got to win my world title in front of fans. And that's a way you can do it, where he wins there against Rollins, and then Priest cashes in on him. Now, Tom Jameson, 77, said WWE should do another Armageddon Hell in a Cell match, probably via the women's division in the future. Your thoughts? I would love to see it. Like, we have not witnessed a 6-person Hell in a Cell match since that Armageddon one, from what I can recall. We've had some tag match Hell in a Cells, but a 6-pack challenge Hell in a Cell would be a lot of fun. And I'm actually shocked that we haven't seen one. So, yeah, I would love to see it. I don't know if it's going to be women's division or not, but I agree 100% that WWE should do it. And the only way to make it happen, though, there has to be the demand. So message Triple H, at Triple H on Twitter, and let him know you want to see that match. The more people that message him, the better the chances are, I think. Calvin Bowman sent in this question, and what was my favorite match from WrestleMania 20? Well, the main event with he who should not be named, Chris Benoit, just named him, winning the title from Shawn Michaels and Triple H. It's a hard match to watch now because of what happened with Chris Benoit, but I mean, that was still the best match of WrestleMania, and that was a big moment in wrestling. Him and Eddie Guerrero celebrating afterwards, just a big moment for fans that wanted to see these two underdogs finally reach the top of the mountain. It was a really cool moment. I mean, it's depressing, not just what happened with Benoit, but also Eddie Guerrero passing away less than 2 years later. But it was still a very special moment, and the match was awesome. I mean, fantastic match. So my wife, Caitlin, sent in a few questions. I got to get to at least one here tonight. She said, which pay-per-views have the greatest rewatchability? And I would say WrestleMania. WrestleMania is the Super Bowl of wrestling, and it's usually kept simple. You don't have these really complicated or convoluted storylines. Sometimes you do, but for the most part, you can watch a WrestleMania and just get right into it with the video packages and such. You have a pretty good understanding of what's happening. And because it is the biggest show of the year, you know, you got all the pyro and the theatrics and everything. Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble matches are very fast-paced, always entertaining, and it sets up WrestleMania. So yeah, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, maybe the Money in the Bank shows because the latter matches have a lot of high spots and are fun to watch. So in general, I would say WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and then maybe Money in the Bank. And back in the day, I would add Survivor Series to the list, but then Survivor Series kind of fell off for a while and only recently started to pick up momentum again with the War Games. Ian sent in this question. He says, NXT currently has a division for the Heritage Cup, which is more shoot-based and catch wrestling-based. Should WWE bring this division to the main roster? I like the idea of NXT having some of their own exclusive content. Now, this could happen at some point, and because it is a new regime with Triple H, I think there is a decent chance of it. I'm not exactly clamoring for it. Like, I'd rather see what they've been doing at Deadline with the now I forgot the name of the matches. The Iron Survivor Challenge, I believe, is what they're called. Like, I like those matches. I'd love to see one of those matches on the main roster at some point. But that was basically designed to replace War Games, which got sent to the main roster. Retro Pixel Drew 64 sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. This comment is, should Jay versus Jimmy Uso be a street fight? Yes. I think that's a great idea. I think because it is brother versus brother, you need to step it up and let these guys have a crazy match with a lot of physicality. So I would be all for that. I hope they'll start building up that match, because I feel like there really hasn't been much hype beyond what happened at SummerSlam, and then Jimmy Uso costing Jay the Intercontinental title. But yes, a street fight would be a great idea for them to settle their score. A Samoan street fight. There you go. This Guy Experience sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It says, no DQ review this week. Big E returning soon. As I mentioned at the start of the stream, we rescheduled the No DQ review Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Big E returning soon. It's really up in the air. I would be surprised if he never wrestles again, but he hasn't come back yet. I thought there might have been a decent chance at the Royal Rumble, but no Big E. So really the only person that knows is him. It could happen at any time. I just think it's going to be his call, and if he feels like it's worth taking the risk, he might get the itch. Maybe his doctors say, we think you're good to go. It's really touch and go. I mean, there's no timetable for when he's going to come back, unfortunately. I want him to do what's best for him. He had a great career. If it's over, nothing to be sad about, because he got to be WWE champion. He was part of one of the greatest tag teams of all time. He had a tremendous run. And, there's nothing really left for him to do. So he's got to do what's best for him at this point. And if that means staying out of the ring, then so be it. But if he wants to come back and his doctors say he can come back and he's good to go, then I'd love to see him back. Sun Goshuaku sent me an interesting question, and I really had to think about this one. He said, is there a winner of the Royal Rumble who you thought should not have won at first, but after winning the world title at WrestleMania, you said it was the right decision, or you were sold that it was the right decision? And he asked me to name one male and female winner. He did list off all the female Rumble winners, and I don't really feel like any of them at the time they won were the wrong decision. And then later I was like, actually, that was the right decision. I was fine with all the people that won, even Charlotte Flair. I know some people have mixed feelings about Charlotte. And as far as the men Rumble winners go, I mean, I think when Vince McMahon won, a lot of people were pissed off and frustrated, but I think it did add to the storyline with Steve Austin leading into WrestleMania. So in the end, I think it was the right call, even though a lot of people consider Vince to be among the worst Royal Rumble winners of all time. He didn't mention Ronda Rousey, which, I mean, Ronda coming back at the time, I guess it made sense, reestablish her, give her the win. So I really didn't have a problem with Ronda winning. Her run ultimately was disappointing, but I still don't think it was a wrong decision. I guess the one that might have been the most questionable for the men was 94. I remember at the time, I was like, why are we not going with Lex Luger as the sole winner? Like, he came so close at SummerSlam. Okay, so Luger wins the Rumble, gets the title at WrestleMania. So when that double co-winner ending went down, I was like, okay. Wasn't sure what to make of it. But then I think in the end, WWE made the right call with what they did for WrestleMania, with Owen beating Brett in the first match, and then Brett beating Yokozuna for the title, setting up Brett versus Owen. I think the way they went was the right call. So that is probably the best answer I can give you, son. That's a tough question to answer. Matthew said, hey, Aaron, do you think the price Tony Khan has paid for Okada and the rumored asking price of Mercedes Moné is going to hurt the wrestling business? I see more free agents and people whose contracts are coming up are going to make demands for much higher increases. Do you also think Tony Khan has spent too much on Okada? When does it become too much just to sign people? Hard question to answer because I do not have access to all of AEW's financial information. So I don't know how much money Tony Khan has at his disposal. I don't know what kind of money AEW is going to get for their TV renewal. Like if their TV renewal deal is massive and a big increase over what they've been making, then they'll be able to afford to sign some people. We also don't know if that Okada number is accurate. You know, there have been people saying the number was accurate, and then Dave Meltzer said that it wasn't accurate. So it's hard to say if Tony Khan spent too much on Okada, because we really don't know what the legitimate figure is that he's being paid and what the television deals are going to look like. I mean, there's a lot of different things at play here. I mean, he arguably is one of the best wrestlers in the world. So if anything, I think a lot of wrestlers are underpaid. I mean, from AEW to WWE, I think a lot of them are not being paid enough. So I think if anything, this is good for the wrestlers, and they deserve more. And they deserve to be paid a lot. And it's up to the promoters to get the return on their investment. But hey, you see the stuff that Will Ospreay does out there. Like, I think that guy deserves a big paycheck. Like, he's going out there and he's risking his life every time he goes out there. And really all of them are. Every wrestler who goes out there, they're taking a risk, and they should be compensated well for it. So that's all I got to say. Will it come back to bite Tony Khan? I mean, at some point you got to make up for some of the losses in other areas. You know, the attendance. We know the attendance is not great, and they have to be losing money on that. So, you know, there's only so many people you can sign, and I know Tony Khan is against the idea of firing people, but I think at some point you have to trim the fat a little bit. So he's going to have to make some business decisions. I know he's got a lot of money. His family is well off, but you know, if you're running a business, you gotta make some difficult decisions sometimes. All right, Jeremiah Dorset has a question here. Hey, Aaron, what is your opinion on the most disappointing storyline payoffs in WWE history in the past 25 years? And he has a top 10 list. His number one is Stone Cold Steve Austin turning heel at WrestleMania 17, joining Vince McMahon. I agree with that. And just in general, the Invasion is right up there. Just one of the biggest flopped angles of all time. I mean, just wasted potential. Bill Goldberg's WWE run, Sting's WWE run, losing to Triple H at WrestleMania. The Fiend losing to Goldberg right before the pandemic started. I mean, those would be my top ones. And he also mentioned Nexus, which I think would be up there as well. You know, something that had a lot of hype when they did the initial angle with them attacking John Cena, but then it fizzled out pretty quickly. All right, we got some questions from TJS. So thank you, TJS, and I'll get to this one right now. He said, what were your thoughts on the Raw guest hosts era? Do you have a favorite? Personally, I was a fan of Bob Barker. I thought the era for the most part was awful. Most of those guest hosts were clearly there for the paycheck, did not give a damn about wrestling. Bob Barker was one of the few highlights. He actually seemed happy to be there and was having a good time. But I would say 9 out of 10 guest hosts were just awful. They had Mike Tyson on for one, and he's already done stuff with WWE prior to that. So, you know, he fit in. And there were a couple others that I thought were okay and seemed like they were actually fans and they actually could interact well with the wrestlers. But yeah, a lot of them were not good. All right, let's get to another one We got one here from Caitlin. I'll get to this one from Caitlin. She said, what are the top 5 events that you have attended in person? I would say WrestleMania 31 and 21, being WrestleMania, of course. I went to a lot of SummerSlams. 2013 was probably my favorite one with Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk. And then the Toronto SummerSlam I went to with everyone in 2019. That was a great show being in Toronto. And then most recently, SummerSlam in Detroit at Ford Field was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the atmosphere, enjoyed meeting up with people, and it was fun to be back at a big event after several years of not going due to COVID. So yeah, those would be my top 5 right there. And also Money in the Bank 2018 was another fun one in Chicago, going to the Allstate Arena, and also Madison Square Garden last year was another event I went to for SmackDown, being able to finally attend a wrestling show at the Garden. So there you go. I got 7. Ian sent in this question. He said, is there a chance you or a group of No DQ members could make a video series of in-depth retro reviews of older WWE, WCW, and ECW pay-per-views? That would be interesting. I don't think we've done that. I did do reviews of almost every pay-per-view several years ago, roughly about a decade ago. I did a whole series of the B pay-per-views. You know, once the network came out, I started binging all the pay-per-views. But that would be a nice idea to do it with a panel, like get everybody to rewatch a pay-per-view, and then we all come in and share our thoughts on it. So I do like that idea, Ian, and I will take it under consideration. Dwayne Atkinson sent in a $2 super chat. This is a good one. He says, what pay-per-view have you rewatched the most? Well, I would have to say, since it goes back to my childhood, maybe WrestleMania 3. You know, it's just fun to watch back in the 80s and watch Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, watching King Kong Bundy squash the little guys. Lots of fun moments at that WrestleMania. I would say that, or WrestleMania 7 was one of my favorites as a kid, the 1990 Survivor Series. I mean, the ones I tended to rewatch the most were the ones from my childhood that I grew up with. So yeah, those ones for sure. And even the first WrestleMania, probably something I've watched countless times. I couldn't even tell you how many times. So thank you for that, Dwayne. Much appreciated. Now I got another one here from TJS. He says, recent controversy aside, do you believe Brock Lesnar ending The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak was the right or wrong call? This is similar in a way to Sun's question about like something that went down and you might have had a negative opinion on it, but then later you were like, okay, that was actually not a bad idea. This is a good example of that, because I was dumbfounded, like the rest of the world, when Brock Lesnar ended the streak. But looking back at it, I actually think it worked out. Like at the time, I couldn't process in my mind Brock Lesnar is going to be a big deal in WWE for another decade. Like I just didn't fathom that happening. But looking back, like Brock did become the guy, and that really took him to the next level. Like at the time, my thought process was, okay, you got to have a young up and comer beat The Undertaker. So when Brock won, I was like, okay, does he really need this? But the fact that Brock continued for so long and had such a great run, I do think it was the right call. I think it would have been too soon for Roman Reigns, you know, even though he was the young up and comer. I think at that point in time, it was too soon. Now, maybe if Undertaker had beaten Brock and then the Roman Reigns match happened in 2007 with Undertaker, maybe at that point, Roman beating him would have been the right call, though people would have probably hated it. So I do think Brock was the right call looking back on it. And I think it was the right thing for business. And TJS also sent in this question here. TJS said, Mick Foley took countless unprotected chair shots to the head, went through flaming tables, thumbtacks, thrown off the cell, and even lost an ear in the ring. Why did people praise that but attack Darby for his glass spot? And what are your thoughts? Big difference between then and now. And that is no social media back then. In that era, and keep in mind, culture was different too. And wrestling fans, I was just starting to get on the internet, but I don't really remember fans talking about wrestling being too dangerous. And I think it wasn't until we started learning more about concussions. Keep in mind, this was before all this stuff came out about CTE and, you know, the dangers of everything that wrestlers were doing. And it was really before a whole lot of wrestlers started dying young. I mean, we had Brian Pillman, Louis Spicolli, and a few others around that time that passed away young. But then, you know, a decade later, we had all these guys dying young, and we were finding out about CTE and all these other things. So now, you know, we're more educated. All of us, the wrestlers, the industry, the fans, we're all more educated about the dangers of wrestling and taking those insane bumps. And I think Mick Foley himself would tell you that he shouldn't have done that stuff. He's paying the price now. We're seeing the effects. You know, it took 20, 30 years for us to see the effects that the 90s wrestling style was having on people, and all those bumps in the ladder matches and ECW's hardcore matches and so on and so forth. So, you know, when people see this stuff now, they're like, dude, Darby Allin is going to be in a wheelchair in 20 years, if not sooner, at the rate he's going. Like, this is really dangerous what he's doing. And he needs to think about his long-term future. So it's just a different era, and the fact that we know a lot more than we did back then. And the lack of social media too. You know, now everything's under a microscope. Every little thing a wrestler does, fans are judging it on social media, and you know, access to these comments, it's easier than it ever was. I mean, maybe there were some of those comments back in the 90s, but you know, not as many people were online, and they were a lot harder to find. It wasn't in your face as much. All right, so James sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, James. I appreciate it. James says, who would you most like to see Hollywood do a big budget biopic of? Well, just because of how scandalous it could be, Vince McMahon. You know, there was talk about this Netflix documentary, but who knows if that's going to happen. The show Succession really reminds me a lot of Vince McMahon. I see a lot of parallels between Vince's family business and Logan Roy's family business. And a Vince McMahon biopic, I mean, that would be wild. Like, quite frankly, they could do more than one movie. I mean, they could do a whole series just on Vince McMahon. You know, if it wasn't with the company's influence and it was completely honest, like that would be very interesting. You know, Ric Flair, like an actual biopic that they're working on now with The Rock, it's probably going to be a little bit biased. So, you know, the key is that it would be honest and there wouldn't be, you know, a spin. It would just be, hey, this is what happened. This is the story. We might exaggerate it a little bit, but this is what happened. You know, so Vince would be very interesting. And there are some others as well that would be fun to watch. Hamp Connell sent in a $9.99 super chat. Thank you for that, Hamp. I appreciate it. Says, personally, I was a big fan of the Austin heel turn when he was teaming with Triple H. They were beating up all the tag teams. Austin beat up JR. The feud with Undertaker and Kane, I enjoyed it. To each their own. I think what sucked about that, I mean, not just the Austin heel turn, but okay, if you're going to turn Austin heel, you got Triple H as a potential white hot babyface. You know, he beat Austin. What bugged me about that, and maybe they were planning a breakup, and this was going to lead to that, but Triple H beat Austin at No Way Out, and then he's friends with him all of a sudden. So yeah, maybe they had a long-term plan for that, and they were going to split at some point, and you know, it got cut short because of Triple H's injury. But yeah, I just didn't want to see Austin as a heel and Triple H as a heel, and them together just didn't set right with me. And I know some people liked it, and maybe in a different time period it could have worked, but right then and there was not a fan of it. But thank you, Hamp. And again, we all have different opinions on it. It's all subjective. Shout out to WrestleMess, who sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It says, could a subpar AEW run and no serious sustained boost in ratings damage Mercedes Moné's value and credibility? I mean, definitely. And I hate to say this, being a big Adam Copeland / Edge fan, but I feel like his stock has really fallen in AEW. I don't know if they've stretched out this storyline with Christian for too long, or the fact that he said he was going to be a full-timer. And yeah, he's done some matches, you know, the Cope Open, whatever he was calling it. But for whatever reason, he just doesn't feel like a big deal. He almost feels like a random guy on the roster. He doesn't have that star presence that he used to have. And I think, you know, he's a great talent, but also he had the WWE marketing machine behind him. With Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks, you know, that's a big question mark. She's a great talent, great wrestler, man or woman. She's one of the best. But can she succeed without the WWE marketing machine behind her? Or will her star start to fall? Will AEW be able to elevate her and elevate the women's division? Or is it just going to be like Saraya, where she comes in, she starts off hot, maybe she even gets the world title at some point, but then a year down the line, she's just another person on the roster. So that is a very big question mark at this time. Hamp Connell sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Hamp. Says, Austin beating up Michael Cole was so damn funny. Well, I mean, Austin beating up anybody was funny. I remember him beating up Jim Ross in Oklahoma. They were really trying to get people to hate Austin, but people were fighting it. That was the problem from day one. Fans did not want to boo Steve Austin. And they had him beat up Jim Ross. You know, they had him beat up other people. But yeah, Austin had some fun moments. The thing is, he was entertaining regardless of what his role was. Like, it wasn't right for business, but Austin and Kurt Angle had some really funny moments backstage, you know, with Vince McMahon, you know, hugging Vince. It was ridiculous and counterproductive for business, but it was entertaining. Austin was great in that role. It just wasn't what people wanted to see at the end of the day. So it was what it was. Now, Jeremiah Dorset sent in a email question here. He said, hey, Aaron, if WWE had waited until WrestleMania 18 to crown an undisputed champion, do you think it would have been a six-pack challenge inside Hell in a Cell between Austin, The Rock, Jericho, Angle, Triple H, and Hollywood Hogan instead of a one-night tournament at Vengeance? I don't think that they wanted to do a multi-man match for WrestleMania. Keep in mind, they already did one for WrestleMania 2000. And granted, business was hot at the time, so they got away with it. But I think traditionally WWE tries to avoid doing big multi-way matches at WrestleMania. You want to have the one-on-one match. You know, that's what's most marketable. And, you know, I think the six-pack challenge was an experiment, you know, doing something outside of the box. And they never brought it back, so maybe they felt like it wasn't something that was going to really move the needle, so to speak. But yeah, I think for the most part, it's best to do one-on-one matches, especially world title matches at WrestleMania. You know, sometimes we get 3 ways or 4 ways, but yeah, like I said earlier, I still hope we get to see another 6-way Hell in a Cell match at some point at one of these premium live events. All right, one more here from TJS, and then if there's any other super chats, otherwise we'll wrap this up here as we're getting close to the hour. TJS said, as a wrestling fan, what are the biggest under and over deliveries in your opinion? Example, a mystery partner or big return, a new match type that was better or worse than you anticipated, and so forth. Well, as far as match types, I think Elimination Chamber definitely exceeded expectations. Like, I didn't even know what to expect with that. Same thing with Hell in a Cell. Like, when they announced it, I was like, okay, it's just a big cage. What's the hype about this? And then they had a crazy ass match. Biggest over deliveries or under deliveries. I mean, Chris Jericho's debut was excellent. I mean, that exceeded. I had high expectations for that, and they exceeded that. And then, you know, there were a lot of big duds in wrestling history. You know, like the Bill Goldberg heel turn when WC. I mean, you could just look at WCW for all the under deliveries, like when they were saying something was going to happen at the Great American Bash that not even Vince McMahon could stop, and it was just Goldberg turning heel. Okay, and TNA had a lot of them, like the August 1 warning with Tito Ortiz. I mean, that was awful. WWE had plenty of stinkers, like the gobbledygooker, you know, Shockmaster. I mean, Shockmaster may have over-delivered just because of how entertaining of a debacle it was. On paper, that sounds like a terrible idea. You know, some guy coming out, you know, with a stormtrooper mask. I mean, who comes up with this stuff? But it was entertaining because it was infamous. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many that I can't even think of off the top of my head, but there were a lot of them. So anyways, guys, on that note, I will go ahead and wrap up this live No DQ&A video. Thank you to everybody that sent in questions. Very much appreciated. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for all the latest wrestling news and rumors. No DQ review coming up Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And, of course, all the usual streams as we head into WrestleMania 40. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Buy a shirt. If you liked the video, buy a shirt at nodq.com/merch. Say yes to No DQ. Wait a minute. We're not done yet. Got it just in time here. Teaching in Color X sent in a $5 super chat, so I'll read this one. He says, do people not talk about Roman and The Rock 9 years ago in Philly? I think people talk about it all the time. I mean, we all remember it. That Roman Reigns Royal Rumble win was infamous. The Rock coming out there, and I'm sure WWE will reference it many times. I mean, it was a big moment, not exactly a moment that WWE wanted. They wanted Roman Reigns to be universally cheered, and they wanted that great moment with The Rock endorsing him, and the crowd just crapped on it. And The Rock's like, okay, whatever, I'm out of here. But now, you know, The Rock is invested, and, you know, that's definitely part of that history. And I do hope that they'll bring it up. But yeah, people definitely talk about it. I hear it all the time on social media, people bringing up that moment. So thank you for that. Have a great night, everybody. Say yes to NoDQ.com. And I will see you all next time.